Well, hello everyone again, and welcome back to our Bible study in the book of Revelation. And we're moving forward, but not as fast as any of us would like, maybe. But I find that sometimes there's details that I don't want to skip over. I want to be as thorough as I can, and yet I want to keep it simple, and it's not a simple book. But I'm hoping that we can, when you take this course, this course of studies, these lessons, that you'll have a better understanding of the book of Revelation and at least a good overview of the book as to what has been, what is, and what is to come. So we're on to lesson 28, which is the beginning of Revelations chapter 13. Now, when I was in university back a few years ago, and I I had a classmate that lived at 666 St. George Street in the city where the university is located. And I don't want to say too much more about that because privacy issues. But anyway, we were doing the book of Revelation in the university courses. And anyway, she said to the professor, my civic number is 666. Should I move? And we kind of looked at the professor and thought, well, how is he going to answer that question? Myself thought, well, why would she move? And so on. Yeah, it is a number in the Bible, but it doesn't mean that because she had that number that she should move. Anyway, that was her question. And of course, the professor said no. He said, I don't think you need to go sell your house. But in Revelation 13, we're going to learn the significance of this number 666. And there's a strange beast associated with it, the beast. And in Revelation 12, that we just finished, John saw a great red dragon with 7 heads, 10 horns, 7 crowns. And this dragon was symbolic representation of Satan. And in the first 4 verses of Revelation 13, John sees a further vision, a manifestation of this same beast. And so I'm going to read from Revelation chapter 13, 1 to 4. And the dragon stood on the shore of the sea, and I saw a beast coming out of the sea, and he had 10 horns, 7 heads, 10 crowns on his horns, and on each head a blasphemous name. The beast I saw represented a leopard, but had feet like those of a bear, and a mouth like those of a lion. The dragon gave the beast his power, and his throne, and great authority. One of the heads of the beast seemed to have had a fatal wound, but the fatal wound had been healed. The whole world was astonished and followed the beast. Men worshipped the dragon because he had given authority to the beast, and they also worshipped the beast and asked, who is like the beast? Who can make war against him? So we see here that John saw this beast coming out of the sea, and he's seen several times before in the book of Revelation. And this, in a symbol of the Gentile nations of the world, we find that's what the sea is. The sea is the Gentiles of the world. And this appearance of this beast is a vision that symbolizes Satan and the worldwide evil power of Satan. In Revelation 12, the beast represented the Roman Empire of the first century and was the instrument used by the devil in the failed attempt to destroy the male child born to a woman, Jesus, born of Mary. And we found that in Revelation 13. We see the same beast arising in a different time of history, the last days. Now, we have to get a sense of some of these things. We have to go back. A lot of times we go back to the book of Daniel, and if you read in Daniel chapter 7, you'll find many parallels to the events of Revelation 13. For Daniel also saw beasts rising out of the sea. He saw four beasts, a beast like a lion, another like a bear, a third like a leopard, and a fourth, which was unique in that it was a fantastic creature with 10 horns. And in many ways, uh, we can see the resemblance of this beast in Revelation 13. And we find in Daniel that the beasts he saw represented four great world empires of his day and following. The first beast was a lion, representing Babylon. The second beast was like a bear, represented the Mede Persia Empire. The third, like a four-headed leopard, represented Greece, the Greek Empire. And these same images are incorporated in the beast from the sea, which we just read from the writings, the writing in the book of Revelation, where Jesus told John to write these things down. Now, the fourth beast, with its 10 horns and 7 heads, represents the Roman Empire. And in this one strange beast, all the powers of the previous beast have been combined, and the lion-like ferocity of Babylon, the bear-like Medo-Persian power to crush and to dismember, and the leopard-like swiftness of the Greeks. Now, we'll find in Revelation chapter 17, we're going to find a greater explanation of some of the things that we're seeing here in this chapter, chapter 13. And in 17, 9 to 11, the angel goes on to further explain the meaning of the beast. The seven-headed beast here, the seven-headed beast, are also 7 kings or kingdoms. 5 have fallen, one is, the other is yet to come. But when he does come, he must remain for a little while. The beast who once was, and now is not, is an 8th king, and he belongs to the 7, and he also is going to his destruction. Now, it's probably clear as mud, but we're going to find that there's a world empire. We're going to find as we go on that the Roman Empire will again, in a sense, be reestablished. We're going to find the world rule again. So we're going to stay with Book of Revelation chapter 13 right now, and when we get to 17, and as we lead up to 17, we're going to find out more of what's going on, and so when we get to 17, we'll have a further explanation. Now, in 13, 5, and 6, we're going to find some of the actions of this beast and the effect of his action upon the world. Now, the beast, it says in 13, 5, and 6, the beast was given a mouth to utter proud words and blasphemies, and to exercise his authority for 42 months. He opened his mouth to blaspheme God, and to slander his name and his dwelling place, and those who live in heaven. So what type of activity is John describing here? What do we mean by blasphemies? And what is blasphemy? And in Scripture, it means doesn't mean that we're cursing God in a sense. It's when you hear someone rip off a whole row of oaths or curses, it's not really blaspheming in the biblical sense. To blaspheme is to claim to have godlike powers, or to be God, to declare yourself God. And remember in history that many of the Roman emperors wanted to be worshipped. They wanted to be treated like God. And they felt they had godlike powers. So that's what it means in this to blaspheme and words of blasphemy and exercise his authority. So he's trying to exercise his authority and act like God. Okay, I'm going to move on. In verses 7 and 8 of chapter 13, we learn more about this world leader, who the book of Revelation calls the beast, and the power that he has throughout the world. I'm reading 13, 7 to 8. He was given power to make war against the saints and to conquer them, and he was given authority over every tribe, people, language, and nation. All inhabitants of the earth will worship the beast, all whose names have not been written in the book of life belonging to the Lamb that was slain from the creation of the world. So this beast, as I spoke about a few moments ago, is a revived Roman Empire, and he's given enormous power, including power of life and death over every nation and culture in the world, every language. The beast will have achieved the dream of every conqueror in history, in a sense, being a conquering tyrant. We've had people that tried to rule the world. Alexander the Great, Genghis Khan, Napoleon, Hitler, and they wanted complete domination over all the world, but they never were able to achieve that. But this beast will achieve these things. And all around the people, around the world, people will die by the thousands at this beast's command. And many believers will be martyred for Christ in the last days of human history. And they'll be martyred. These who will be martyred, we saw back in Revelation 7, the great multitude of martyrs which no man could number, coming out of the tribulation from all nations, languages, tribes. These are the ones who have washed their robes in the blood of the Lamb and made them white, and they will pay the ultimate price because they oppose the beast, this leader of this revived Roman Empire. And when we move on, well, just briefly, it says here in John goes on in verses 9 and 10 of chapter 13, and it says, "He who has an ear, let him hear. If anyone is to go into captivity he will go. If anyone is to be lifted to be killed with the sword he will be killed." And this calls for patience, endurance, and faithfulness on the part of all the saints. Now, that's a hard verse to get your head around, but especially in the NIV that I just read. But it basically says, if he who has an ear, let him hear. If anyone leads others into captivity he will go. If anyone kills with the sword he will be killed. And then it calls for patient endurance on the part of all the saints. So, another translation of that, I'm going to read, and this is from the New Living Translation, not the paraphrase, but the Living Translation, and it gives it another little 13:10. If I can see it. Anyone who is destined for prison will be taken to prison. Anyone destined to die by the sword will die by the sword. This means that God's holy people must endure persecution patiently and remain faithful. And I think that's probably a simpler translation as to what we have there in that kind of difficult translation. So these verses tell us that the law of consequences is not going to be suspended forever. God has not forgotten any injustice that has been committed against his children, against his people. And God cannot be mocked. Even though it looks like evil has triumphed, and maybe has for now at this point in the book, but judgment is on the way. Sooner or later, the one who kills with the sword dies by the sword. The one who takes hostages must someday be taken into captivity. So God calls his people to wait, to endure, and remain faithful. And so that's the message through all the difficulties that Christians will face at this time and this to come, no matter what. And even today, when we face persecutions, we face difficulties and so on, the message is the same today, that we are to remain faithful. Faithfulness is the word. Remain faithful and endure to the end. So I'm going to leave it there, and then we'll finish up the book of Revelation 13, and we'll go on in the next lesson to the second beast. Thank you for joining me, and I pray that this has been a blessing to you. I know it's difficult, but I think hopefully if you're faithful in studying this, you're, like I said earlier, you'll have a better understanding and a better overview. We may not understand every little sequence and every symbol, but we'll have a good overview of the book of Revelation. God bless you, and thank you for joining me.